Okay, in this video we're going to look at the character of Laertes. We're going to look at the character of his father Polonius. And if we get time, we will look at the character of Horatio. If not, Horatio will be on a different little video. Okay, so let's take a look quickly at Laertes, an interesting character in himself. What basic information can we talk about to begin with? Who is Laertes? Well, he's a member of the nobility. Why? Because he's the son of Polonius, and Polonius, of course, is Claudius's chief advisor. So Laertes is his son, is Polonius's son. His sister is Ophelia. That's Hamlet's love interest, or at least was. And he studies at a university in Paris. So he's quite a well-off member of the nobility, and in many ways he's similar to Hamlet. Okay, he's of a similar age, and he is of slightly similar temperament. He's the same in many ways, but he's different in a couple of key areas. So what would we describe his character traits as? What kind of a person is he? Well, first of all, he's a cynical person. A cynical person is somebody who, you tell them something and they don't believe it, or they tend to look on the negative side of things. Now, why can we say that? Well, he does not believe Hamlet's love for his sister is genuine, and he advises against her seeing him. So very early in the play, we see Laertes and Ophelia together, just before he leaves to go back to Paris. And he's advising her basically to break up with Ophelia, with Hamlet, because he thinks Hamlet is just faking it, basically. He wants, I don't know what he wants out of Ophelia, but he does not want a genuine, long-lasting marriage. That's what Laertes thinks. Now, there's nothing to suggest that that is actually the truth. If anything, Hamlet does actually seem to genuinely like Ophelia, and Ophelia likes Hamlet. So that's why I would describe him as being cynical. Hamlet hasn't really done anything yet to suggest that he doesn't like Ophelia. So for Laertes to come along and say Hamlet is a bit of a fake and you should dump him, I don't think it's very fair. However, sometimes that's what brothers do, big brothers. They're overly protective. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh on him, but I don't think so. Because there's another piece of evidence to suggest why he's cynical. And it's when he immediately believes Claudius at the very end of the play, when he lies about the circumstances of Polonius' death. So Polonius is Laertes' father, and he's murdered at the hands of Hamlet. Now, it was a mistake, but it happened. So Laertes immediately rushes back from Paris in order to avenge his father's death, and he's willing to kill anybody, even if it was the king himself that did it, because at this stage he doesn't know that it was Hamlet that did it. He's willing to kill anyone. And when Claudius kind of tells him half-truths about how it happened, Laertes immediately believes him because of his kind of cynical attitude towards Hamlet. He doesn't really trust Hamlet, he doesn't like him, so he immediately believes Claudius and sets about planning Hamlet's death. What else can we say about him? Well, in fairness to him, he's a man of action. He's not like Hamlet in that regard. He does what he says he'll do. So when he makes his mind up about something, he proceeds to get it. For example, he begs his father to return to Paris at the start of the play, after Claudius's coronation, and he succeeds. He makes his mind up about Hamlet immediately, showing no guilt about planning to kill him. So that's in stark contrast, I suppose, to Hamlet himself. When Hamlet finds out that Claudius killed his father, he stews on it for days. He has a guilty conscience about thinking about killing him. He can't seem to make a decision on it. But when you look at Laertes, when Laertes finds out that Hamlet killed Polonius, he immediately, without any guilt, plans to kill him. And, you know, sets up the fight, the sword fight at the very end. So, he's very different to Hamlet in that regard. He does what he says he'll do. He's a man of action. He's well travelled. He's a student in Paris, for example. He's educated. And he's a very skilled fighter. So he's not a man to be trifled with. Now, his biggest weakness, he's very rash. What's rash? Rash is somebody who makes their mind up before thinking things through. And that's definitely not Hamlet, but it is Laertes. When he learns of his father's death, he rushes back to Elsinore. Elsinore, of course, is the castle where they all live. And he's willing to defy everybody, the king, God, and his own conscience, to get revenge. Having patience, he says, would make him a bastard. Okay, he's not somebody to hang around. He's very quick-tempered, shall we say, and quick to make decisions. And that has positives, but it can also have drawbacks. Now, in general, there's nothing really that negative about Laertes there. Laertes is not the enemy of Hamlet in this play, even though he eventually does kill him by stabbing him with the poisoned sword in the last scene. But he even apologizes for that. He didn't mean to really, and he feels guilty about doing it. He's not the enemy of Hamlet. In fact, and if you just look at this last little box, he's like a mirror image of Hamlet, except without the delaying, the procrastination, or, unfortunately for him, a deep conscience. So he's not as deep a person, but at least he doesn't delay. But in other ways, he's so similar to Hamlet. He's similar age, similar background, similar probably intelligence, similar skills, similar sword fighting ability, similar courage. But when it comes to his ability to think as deeply as Hamlet can, and we see that in Hamlet's soliloquies and his trouble with murdering Claudius, that he does think very deeply and he's a very, very deep human being, Laertes just doesn't have that. Okay, that's Laertes. Now on to his father, Polonius. Polonius is a very interesting character because he is... Well, let's just take a look at his basic info first of all. He's an employee of the king, so the king pays his wages. In fact, he's the chief advisor of the king. So his job is to advise the king. And of course, he's Laertes and Ophelia's father. Now, lots of people don't like Polonius. He's not exactly somebody that you can warm to that easily. He's kind of a sneaky character. He's not all that intelligent, but he does have some positive traits. And the first one, I suppose, would be he is extremely loyal. You know, now that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing, because it depends on who you're being loyal to. So if you're being loyal to Hitler, let's say, you know, being loyal in and of itself isn't always a positive. But we have to make note of it, that Polonius shows blind loyalty, never questioning. Blind loyalty to the throne of Denmark. He never questions Claudius, or is suspicious, never suspicious, about King Hamlet's death. Now, we have to put a little note beside that, because, you know, really? He never talks about it, but surely he must have been a little bit suspicious about how King Hamlet died, and about how his wife Gertrude remarried so quickly, less than a month after King Hamlet's death. I don't know. He is loyal to his two children and looks out for their interests. He encourages Ophelia to break up with Hamlet for her own safety, and he gives priority to his son's request to return to Paris when he meets with the king. He could have spoken about a lot of other things with the king, but he doesn't. He asks to see if Laertes has permission to go back to Paris. So he does look out for his own children. He's loyal to his family and he's loyal to Claudius. But that's about it, because here's where the negative aspects of his character come into it. He's extremely sneaky and deceitful. His main weakness is his willingness to deceive others, even his own children. He sends Rinaldo to spy on his son, and he uses Ophelia as bait with Hamlet. So that one in particular, sending Rinaldo to spy on his son, you know, that shows a kind of level of deceit that really, if a parent were to do it nowadays, they'd probably be thrown in jail. But he sends this professional kind of private investigator, if you want to call him, Rinaldo, to go to Paris to spy on his son and to use all means necessary to succeed in spying on his son. He also uses Ophelia. So even though he cares about Ophelia and wants her to break up with Hamlet, he uses her as bait with Hamlet to see what the hell is going on with Hamlet, so that he can better get in with Claudius. That's his overall objective, so that Claudius will like him more, and he's willing to use his own kids to do that. He uses Gertrude to try to get Hamlet to reveal his trickery, and he hides like a rat behind a curtain to listen in. Now, unfortunately for him, he gets killed in that scene, and it's kind of, you know, he's killed because of his own sneakiness and deceit. He's hiding behind a curtain, and Hamlet thinks it's Claudius and stabs him. Did he deserve it? Maybe. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. Now here's my favourite thing to say about Polonius. He's extremely shallow. There's no emotional depth in Polonius. None. The advice he gives to Laertes in particular is nonsense. For example, despite telling Laertes, give every man your ear, thine ear, in other words, listen to every man, but give very few your voice, but don't do much talking. That's what he's saying. He says you should listen to people, but don't lecture them. He says this whilst endlessly lecturing him. So the audience is very quickly aware that this guy is full of crap. He's a very shallow person, and he's not very self-aware of what he's saying, because what he's saying is not what he's doing. Even Gertrude, who's not exactly famous for her perceptiveness or intelligence, even she can see this, telling him to speak with more matter and less art. In other words, get to the point. Okay? Shut up waffling and get to the point. The children, but does not seem close to them. He sees nothing wrong with spying on them or using them to further his own goals. Now, that's a trait of somebody who's extremely shallow and lacking in emotional depth. Somebody who's willing to go to those ends to impress a king. You know, use your own children. Also, we never really see his wife. You know, we never hear about her or his loving, that end of things. It's like as if he's just married to the job. Now, here's an important point. He lacks courage. Okay, now how do we know that? Well, in that scene where he's killed, just before he's killed, when he thinks that Hamlet is attacking Gertrude, he screams for help rather than confronting Hamlet himself. Now, any man there, any serious male character in this play, if they were being portrayed as a hero, would have jumped out from behind the curtain and would have killed Hamlet themselves, or would have at least stopped him attacking Gertrude. But not Polonius. Polonius screams, and because of that he gets killed. Sort of ironically, really. He gets killed because of his own deceit and treachery. Okay, we won't have time to do Horatio in this video. We'll do him in a different video. But there's the 3 points on Polonius. He's loyal, he's sneaky and deceitful, and he's a shallow person, shallow character. And the 3 points on Laertes, not as bad as that. He's a cynical person. I think we're all cynical, in fairness. He's a man of action. He does what he says he'll do. And he's hot-tempered or rash. Okay, please watch the next video.